Go ahead and find a seat or legs up the wall. So you have that. We'll go there next, but we're going to do a little centering first. So go ahead and find a comfortable seat or laying on your back. Relax. Let those eyes close down. Allow yourself to come into the room, onto your mat, and into your body. Start to connect with your surroundings, allowing yourself to become more present with every passing moment. Start to acknowledge those things around you that might become distractions today during the practice. And see if you can either invite them in and be part of your practice, or if you can really try and let them go and detach yourself for the next few minutes, this next hour or so that we're going to be on our mat. And try to really let yourself be aware of your body, be aware of your mind. Take a full inhale here. And sigh it out, let it go. Start to scan up the body here, checking in. Acknowledging any areas of fatigue, any areas that are tight, any areas that feel like they need to be replenished with energy. We're at the end of our week, our work week here in Saudi Arabia, and so it's time to check in and start to restore ourselves so we can enjoy the weekend. Take another full inhale here. And let it go. And start to check in mentally, emotionally. Notice where the thoughts are bouncing around to. Notice how you're feeling, what emotions are coming up, what might be present. And see if you can kindly and gently let those go. Give them a little word of compassion, a little kind thought, and then send them on their way. Tell them it's the weekend, it's time for you to focus on you, and see if those emotions and thoughts can disappear. Give them a little validity. Whatever you're feeling is valid. It might need to be addressed maybe over the course of you breathing and feeling into your body. You can explore that emotion, but try not to take it off into a storyline or something to distract you from the present. And then bring your hands, cup them over your heart center. And we're going to do one big long sigh of the breath here. So exhale fully. Take a full inhale into the belly, the ribs, the chest. Hold on to the breath for a moment. And then open the mouth and sigh it out. Again, inhale, belly, ribs, chest. Hold the breath. And let it go. One final time, inhaling. And let it go. Release those hands to your thighs and just sit here for a few moments with your body, with your breath. Allow your eyes to blink open. And then from here, we're going to transition to the wall with legs up the wall. If you would like to, you can have a strap to wrap around your thighs to keep them from opening. We're only going to be here for a short time, but we're going to revisit this pose a few times. I like to have something under my hips. I have a blanket here that I'm going to place under my hips just so the floor isn't as hard. If you have a pillow, a towel, a blanket, that works as well. The best way to get to the wall is just bring yourself as close as you can to the wall with one shoulder. And then you're going to slowly drop yourself down and swing your legs up. If you go crashing down right now and do not see me, it's because my cat's trying to get up on his perch, which I have commandeered for today. So hopefully that won't happen. And then once you're there, your booty does not have to touch the wall. If it does, no problem, but get some support, a little support under the hips, maybe even under the whole spine. Maybe even under the head, depending on how you're feeling. And then if you're using that strap, and if you're worried about maybe your legs becoming a little too relaxed, you can always take the strap and just wrap it around the top of the knees, just that hip distance apart, so that they're not going to flop open in case you really do completely relax, because it's been one of those weeks. And then just kind of settle in here. Close the eyes. The arms can be reaching toward the wall. They can be out toward your side. They can be like cactus arms. And just kind of let yourself settle in here. Deepening your breath slightly. Allow the eyes to close, letting yourself just do a little bit more centering and grounding into the present moment. And as we're here, we're just going to revisit our principles of Yin. So the 3 principles of Yin are to come to your edge. And with legs up the wall, it might not be much of an edge, which is totally fine. It's more of a restorative pose. And then you find some stillness. So once you've arrived in that pose, see if you can stay there in stillness without fidgeting, without moving too much. Just allowing yourself to drop into the awareness of what's happening in the body as you're in this position with your body, this shape. And then the 3rd principle is to stay for time. So for each of these, we're going to hold them for about 4 or 5 minutes each. We'll be revisiting legs up the wall a few times. That'll be a little shorter. That's kind of our counter pose today. But allowing you to settle into this pose right now. Dropping into your breath. Just maybe noticing those sensations in the body. Maybe the feet become a little bit lighter. Maybe they become a little cooler. Take a few more cycles of breath here. Take a full inhale here. And let it go. Slowly start to slide those feet down the wall, bend the knees into the chest. If you have this strap around the legs, let it go to the side. And just pause there for a moment, maybe point and flex through the feet. Our next pose is going to be butterfly pose at the wall. So from there, you're going to take those legs back up the wall. You're going to draw those feet down and then draw the knees wide. So soles of the feet are going to kind of stay together. Maybe the pinky edges of your feet stay at the wall. Maybe your heels kind of lift off, no problem. And then just decide how it feels in your hips. If it's too much pressure in your hips, if it's past your edge, you can place some blocks or some pillows under your hips. You can also use your hands as support, kind of like little kickstands, placing them on your thighs with your elbows bent for a little bit of a kickstand if you need that. If you're okay with your legs at the wall and that is a good edge for you, you can relax your arms down. Be mindful if this is bothersome from the low back. Think of lengthening your tailbone a little bit more toward the wall to kind of help support the arch of the low back. And then again, start to settle in to stillness. And with these three principles, finding that edge, that just to the place where it feels a little uncomfortable, that edge of your stretch where you can stay for a while. If at any time it does become too uncomfortable, you can back out of the pose by lifting your feet more up the wall or just going into legs up the wall or even just hugging those knees in. So there's no need for you to stay at the pose or in the pose for longer than you need. It may even be that your body tells you, I'm done with this pose has done all it can do for me, and you come out of it then. Just see if you can notice those sensations that start to arise. Target area here is the hips. You might feel a little bit into the knees, maybe even to the low back. See if you can keep some activity of the balls of the feet drawing toward one another. If and when your mind starts to wander, acknowledge the thought, give it some loving kindness, send it on its way, and see if you can bring yourself back to the sensations happening in the body. Just a few more cycles of breath here. Taking a full inhale here. And let it go. Maybe using your hands, start to draw those knees in toward one another. And then start to lengthen those legs back up the wall. Again, maybe point and flex through the feet, maybe make ankle circles after having them in that position for a while. Just kind of noticing the effects in the hips, the effects along the legs. Just pausing here for a brief counter pose. Take any other movements that feel that they need to happen, that feel organic and natural. Then we're going to transition in a few moments into Malasana at the wall. So our feet, the soles of our feet will press into the wall here. This can be kind of intense. So again, you can keep your feet up as high. You don't need to take them as wide. So start by just drawing your feet flat against the wall. So bend your knees till your feet are flat against the wall. This could be your Malasana. You're going to target a few areas of the joints. If you can, see if you can spread your knees a little bit wider, keeping your feet flat on the wall, and then drawing your knees a little bit wider and your feet down the wall. So you're going to come to some compression in the hips. Your top of your hip is going to meet your hip bone, right? So that thigh is going to meet there. You're going to have a little compression there. As long as it's not painful, you can stay here. And again, you have a couple options to stay in this position. If you have your strap, you can wrap your strap around your knees. You can just stay here if that feels okay and it's not past your edge. You can again use your hands as kickstands on those knees to allow the energy of the muscles to relax, to get deeper into those hips. And that's just going to allow that little hip flexor that goes across the top of the hip maybe to relax, to allow those knees to maybe open wider and those knees to drop closer to the floor when you release that energy of the muscles, that gripping of the muscles. And just kind of settle in, see what feels good to you here. And again, if the arms don't work, you have blocks, you have bolsters you can place under or across your belly that prop your thighs up a little bit, blankets that do that. And just settle in here. Notice the different sensations here in this pose compared to the previous one. Notice any similarities. And anytime you feel a space that is a little bit more tight or tense, where you feel more compression, and as long as it's not painful, stay with it and see if you can direct your awareness to that space. See if you can imagine the breath and the blood flowing toward that place to try and give it a little bit more ease, a little bit more comfort. And as your edge dissipates, you can always go a little bit deeper into it by drawing the heels down, maybe the knees wider. But again, doing so mindfully because you want to be able to stay here without fidgeting for the amount of time that we're here. The Yin Yoga practice is always a great practice to help you drop in and become more aware of what's happening in the body, in the mind. To allow you to build more self-awareness of how your body is, how it's built, how it feels on one side versus the other. And then having that knowledge to draw upon each time you make it to your mat or when you come into other activities in your day. Just having a little bit more awareness about the capabilities of your body. Just a few more cycles of breath here. Taking a full inhale here. And let it go. Using the assist of the hands on the legs, start to draw those knees into the chest to begin. Maybe even round your forehead toward your knees. And then maybe take those legs up toward the ceiling, lengthen them out. And again, any movements with the ankles, maybe even just rocking the legs in and out. Maybe even pedaling the knees. Whatever's going to feel best to you to help you relax and come out of that pose. Maybe even massaging those quadriceps, the tops of your thighs. Maybe even into that hip crease where that tight compression was. Just kind of notice the effects of the pose. Notice any differences in the blood flow and the energy flow. So going a little bit deeper into those hips. So we've had a little external rotation, some deep hip flexion. We're gonna go in a little bit more of external rotation. We're gonna do wide legs or straddle. And this one can be a little bit uncomfortable for your inner thighs. So you might wanna have bolsters or blocks beside you. So as you start to take those legs wide, you also have the option if you have a very long strap, and that's kind of at the edge of where you can be, you can kind of rest your feet on the strap with your feet around it. But start to take those legs wide. There's gonna get to be a point where you feel that tension on the inner thigh. And just pause there. So again, just so you can relax the muscles, you might need a block or a pillow to place that underneath your thigh so that you can rest comfortably or more comfortable. And I like to just slide that block up against my thigh and then let the thigh come back down to the block and then just adjust it from there. And just start to settle into that first edge. And this one can be a little tricky because it's kind of hard sometimes to prop it. You might even need to hold your props with your hands. But the target area here is the hips and then that inner groin area. Those ligaments on the inner groin. See if you can kind of relax those muscles. Those muscles are usually fairly tight. They're tight because they're usually pretty weak. We don't really do a lot of activity to target those muscles unless you're a horseback rider. And then they're tight because you overuse them. So it's a tricky muscle, those adductors on the inner thigh. So we're targeting those all the way up into the pelvis. Those insertions all the way down. You might even feel it on the inner knee. Just settle in here into some stillness, into some deep breaths. See if you can relax your legs completely. See if you can let go a little bit more, especially the feet. The feet tend to grip a little bit. See if you just let them kind of hang out. So it's very different than a flow class where I'm asking you to push through your heels and activate your muscles. Here, the tops of your thighs should be relaxed. You're going to feel a little bit of tension on the inner thigh. Then depending on how flexible you are, you might even feel a little bit of compression on your outer hip if your legs are able to go wide, wider than most normal people, because your inner thighs might be a little bit more flexible. And just scan over the body. Notice where you might be holding tension. Maybe the shoulders or jaw. See if you can relax those areas as you settle deeper into stillness, into the awareness that's happening in the lower body. If you find your mind wandering, again, give that thought a little kindness and send it on its way. And bring yourself back to the sensations happening in the legs. And checking in here, acknowledging maybe any tension you might be having in the back. Sometimes we tend to grip a little bit there because we're worried about the sensation in our inner groins. And see if you can relax your back, let it sink into your mat or into your blanket. Few more cycles of breath here. And taking a full inhale here. And let it go. So come out of this, removing any props, maybe even press into the heels, bend the knees slightly, and then start to draw those knees into the chest with the assist of the arms, with the hands. Not moving too fast, going slowly. And then maybe rock those hips from side to side. Maybe even squeeze the knees toward one another. Again, round the spine, draw the forehead toward the knees. And then releasing that down, maybe point and flex through the feet. And then taking those legs back up the wall for a moment, acknowledging the sensations happening in the legs. So we have one more pose with our legs are kind of going up the wall, and then we're gonna let those legs kind of fall down toward the side for a few moments or a few other poses. But our next pose is going to be swan pose or pigeon pose at the wall, figure 4 at the wall. So you may need to back yourself up away from the wall depending on how your hips are and where you want to go for your edge. So we're gonna start with our right ankle. We're gonna cross it over our left knee. And then again, that right leg can relax. It's completely relaxed. And then you're just gonna start to bend your left knee and slide that foot down the wall. So our target area is that right hip. And if this is too close for you, just kind of scoot yourself away from the wall, giving yourself a little bit more clearance so that you can lengthen and relax that hip down. And then so as the resistance or as that edge lessens in that right hip, so we're getting into the outer hip here, you'll just draw that left foot down the wall a little bit more. That's going to draw that leg into your side waist. If you want to kind of maybe make that knee go away from you without using energy of the muscles, you can use your hand to kind of help extend that knee closer to the wall. Or sometimes what I like to do is I like to wrap a towel, take a towel and place it, or a blanket and place it in my hip crease, and then slide that leg down. And that's just going to create a little bit more resistance, some compression, to get a little deeper stretch in that outer hip if I feel that I need to find a different edge. So settle into what's going to be best for you here. Remember that right leg is relaxed, the right foot is relaxed. And sometimes with that being relaxed, there is a few veins flowing along the outside part of that ankle. And sometimes you can press on those with your ankle and your knee, and your foot might fall asleep. So if that happens, just kind of move your foot around a little bit so that you're finding a spot so you're not pressing directly onto one of those veins. But I know that tends to happen for me sometimes. And you don't want anything to fall asleep. Maybe you fall asleep, but you don't want any of your limbs to fall asleep because you don't want to cut off circulation. You want to promote the circulation of energy. So settle in here. And again, this is another part where we tend to maybe grip and try to lengthen our tailbone a little bit. See if you can let that low back kind of round a little bit. And I love the practice of using the wall for yin so we can completely relax our neck and shoulders, especially at the end of a work week. We build up a lot of tension in those, staring at screens, typing, holding phones to our ear while we're doing other stuff with our hands. So it's just a nice way to have those relax, be able to let go of any tension there. This area of our body sometimes, this outer hip area, it's easy to go in a little bit too deep, too fast. So be mindful of that. The stretch really targets across the muscle of the piriformis and the glutes, and then those hamstrings attachments a little bit that all end and have that termination point at your sits bones, the bottom part of your pelvis. So you want to be mindful that you're not irritating that you're finding just that edge to where you feel that sensation, but it's not a deep pulling sensation. Few more rounds of breath here. Taking a full inhale and let it go. Start to slide that left leg up the wall. Take that right leg up the wall. Pause there for a moment. Just notice the effects on that right side. Notice the effects on the left side. And then take any movements that are going to feel good to you right now to allow yourself to release that side of the pose. And then as you're ready, switching to the other side. So taking that left ankle over the right knee. And start to slide that right foot down the wall. Using any compression that you'd like to in that left hip if it's appropriate. And then just start to settle in. Find your edge. As I said, this is a place that we can overstretch because it does tend to warm up more quickly and it moves into that target area a little bit more quickly against the wall. So be mindful that you're not overstretching into that sits bone area. You want to come just to the edge, not to the maximum place. Just a place where you can settle into stillness and then observe the sensations as they arise in the body. Again, being mindful of that left foot, making sure that you're not pressing into those veins to encourage numbness in the toes. You don't want to cut off circulation, you want to promote it. Check in if you're gripping in the hips or the low back. See if you can relax that. Let that tailbone kind of lift up toward the wall rather than toward the baseboard. And as you start to build that body awareness, that awareness of what's happening in the body, try not to be judgmental. Try not to be discouraged by differences between right sides and left sides. Our bodies are completely different from the right side and left side. And then also, depending on what time of day you've had, what type of things or experiences you have had in your body throughout your life, the sides are going to be different. And they're going to be different from day to day. Just acknowledge what's happening, take note. No judgment, no woulds, coulds, or shoulds. Just allow those sensations to arise and note them. And then let them go. Bring your attention to the next sensation. A few more cycles of breath here. Take a full inhale here. And let it go. Slowly start to straighten that right leg. Taking that left leg slowly up the wall. Pause there for a moment. Acknowledging the differences in the sides and acknowledging the flow of energy, of blood in each of the legs. And then make any movements that are natural and feel good here. Maybe pedaling the feet again, the knees. Maybe ankle rotations. So for this next one, you're going to need a little bit of space on either side of you. We're going to do a twist here at the wall. So with our twist, you may need to move yourself away from the wall. So you might need to maybe press into the wall, lift your hips. If you have a bolster or something under your hips, you can move it away, or you can adjust it so it's a little bit longer rather than narrower, or it's a little bit further away from the wall. And then from here, you're gonna have it so that maybe your knees and your hips are in line. So you have this nice angle of knees and hips. It might help for your twist. If you're a little tighter, you might need to move further away from the wall. So this next one, you're gonna take your knees and you're gonna press into the wall, bring your knees together, press into the feet, shift your hips ever so slightly to the left, and then let those knees drop over to the right. So once they get to the ground, you're gonna have this little bit of a twist here. And that top knee may or may not touch the bottom knee. If it's too much sensation in that top hip, since we've just worked that, you can take a blanket, a block, a bolster, a pillow, and place that between the knees and the calf so that it gives you a little bit more support. But once you're there, press your feet into the wall. So you're gonna have a little bit of engagement here. So press into the wall and then let that left shoulder drop back away from your right shoulder. So finding a twist here. So target area is the spine. Second area might be that top hip. You're putting a little bit of pressure into the wall, using those feet kind of as an anchor to allow the upper body to twist. Settle in with your breath. Notice how the breath changes the depth and the intensity of the twist. And being mindful of that left side, that left shoulder. If you start to feel any tingling sensation in the elbow or into the fingers, you might need to slide the elbow down more toward your hips rather than lengthening it up toward your head. It just means you have a brachial nerve that comes from the neck. It goes underneath your clavicle, your collarbone, and then down the arm. And sometimes with your arm up high, it pinches that nerve, causing that numbness. So you just bring the elbow down. If that still doesn't help, you can take your hand and bring it to your shoulder or to your ribs. So you kind of are drawing that shoulder a little bit more away from that collarbone. Start to notice the sensations in the feet. You might notice they're starting to warm up again after being up. They're getting a little bit more blood flow, maybe. And we have another minute or so. If you'd like to maybe go a little deeper in this stretch, you may need to move away from the wall depending on the length of your legs. But if you're comfortable, stay here. If you'd like to maybe intensify this stretch, you're going to take that bottom knee and slide it toward the wall so that your shin is along the wall. So we're just going to get a little deeper into the twist, into that top hip. And then press the top of your foot, your shin into the wall. And breathe here. You might notice that that left shoulder now can drop a little bit more. If you find this goes past your edge and this is not a happy place for you, just go back to the original form that we put our body in. Take a few more cycles of breath here. Take a full inhale here. And sigh it out. If that bottom leg is against the wall, slowly slide it out to match the top leg. And then engage the core, maybe even walk those feet up the wall, bring those hips back up to center. Shift your hips back to center, pause there, take those legs up the wall. Maybe keep a little bend in the knee or pedal the feet. Just kind of acknowledge the sensations in the body there. Notice the spine, notice that left side. And then preparing to switch to the opposite side. Start to bend those knees. Knees and hips are in line. And then slightly shift those hips over to the right. And then allow those knees to drop to the left. And again, once you're there, kind of settle in, check in, notice if you need any props. And then find a little bit of engagement of pressing into the wall with the feet. Do any adjustments so that you can rest here comfortably. Trying to release any energetic engagement of the muscles in the legs. Notice how it feels for that right arm. Is it better for it to be higher or lower, or just in line with the shoulder? Again, just being ever so mindful of any tingling sensations in the body. That just means you're pinching a nerve or blocking a blood vessel from flowing, and you don't want that to happen. So just as needed. I know for me on my right side, it takes a while for the twist to happen, so I'm not pinching that nerve. So I sometimes need to rest my right hand on my ribs rather than extend the arm out. If those thoughts come in and start to distract you from acknowledging all the sensations happening in the body, give that thought a little loving kindness, excuse me, and then send it on its way. Really trying to be curious about the sensations that are happening in the body. And then you can choose to stay here if you'd like to go a little bit deeper. You may need to adjust away from the wall depending on the length of your femur bone, that long bone of your leg. You're going to start to draw your bottom leg toward the wall so that your shin and top of your foot are going to press against that wall. And this might become too intense for that top hip, so you can have a prop of a pillow or a bolster underneath it so it's not too intense on that top hip. And see how that feels in the back. See if it creates a little deeper twist, a little different sensation in the back. And start to settle into stillness. Take a nice full inhale here. And let it go. If your bottom leg is against the wall, slowly start to bring it out to match the top leg. And then ever so slowly walk those feet up the wall. Bring your hips back to center, pausing there. If it feels good, lengthen those legs up the wall. Maybe pedal the feet, do arm circles, maybe just hug the knees into the chest. Rocking a little bit. Just noticing how it's feeling. Next, we're gonna go into a pose for our low back. So a Sphinx pose, but again, at the wall. If Sphinx pose is going to be too intense for you, I'll give another option once I've gotten people into Sphinx. And you just decide that that's not gonna happen for you today, I'll give you another option of supported bridge. So from here, roll yourself over to one side. Pause there for a moment. And then move yourself away from the wall a little bit more. And then roll onto your belly. So you're gonna roll onto your belly. That prop that was underneath your low back, you might want it toward the front of your body for your elbows or for your chest. And you're going to swing your your shins up the wall. So you're gonna lay onto your belly. Those shins are up the wall. So in the Sphinx pose, but with our legs pressing into the wall. So a couple options here. You can rest on your elbows. I always like to have my blanket right under my sternum. It just gives me a little bit more support and a little bit more lift, so I'm not pressing down into my shoulders as much. So this is your position. You can rest your head on a blanket, a bolster, a block. You can let your neck drop, get into the whole spine here. But the target area is the low back. If this is not going to work for you, your option is that supported bridge pose. So you'll have a pillow, a blanket, a block underneath your hips as you lay down. That'll be underneath your hips. And then you're gonna just slowly straighten the legs out to where you feel that tension in the low back. So this would be your other option. As that sensation dissipates, arms can reach overhead. So you have that as your option, supported bridge. If you cannot deal with Sphinx at the wall today. This is a little bit more intense with those knees bent. And you can move yourself away from the wall as well to lessen that intensity. So start to settle in if you haven't already. I'll join you in a moment. Start to acknowledge those sensations. And there will be an option for the last minute or so of this pose where you can go deeper into a little bit of seal pose with the arms straight. You just start to settle in, dropping in. And it's completely fine if your toes drop in and your feet touch one another. If your knees go a little bit wider than your hips. It's all about what your hips are able to do here, but our target area is that low back. So we're creating a little bit of compression into the low back. And the idea of the yin is to create those little compressions, those tensions in the joints to help stimulate and lubricate those areas to keep them moving freely, to get into the soft connective tissues, the ligaments, the tendons, the fascia that surround the muscles, to keep them lubricated, to keep them having fresh and new cells generated, to make them stronger, to make them a little bit more pliable. You don't want them super stretchy or anything, but you want them to be able to have a little give. You want them to be strong so that if you are in a position where you need to move fast and you put a little bit extra tension on those ligaments and tendons, that they don't break, that they're healthy and strong, and they're there to serve you and keep that joint nice and healthy. So if you're feeling like your edge has dissipated, a couple options. Prop your elbows up onto a blanket or bolster to increase that edge. Or if people want to go a little bit deeper, maybe take the arms out a little bit wider, press into the hands, and then straighten the arms. And then allow those shoulders to drop down so you're kind of just stacking your bones. And that's going to create a little bit more tension in the low back. Be mindful you're not gripping your glutes, kind of relax your glutes. I know this is a little bit too much past my edge, so I'm going to bring my elbows back down. But staying there, we have about another 40 seconds or so here in this pose. Breathing into it. Taking a full inhale here. And let it go. If you're up on your hands, slowly bend those elbows to the floor. If you're up on your elbows, go ahead and slide those elbows out wide, laying down all the way onto your belly. And then taking your left knee, draw it out to the side. And maybe even push your right toe into the wall. So you're kind of engaging that quadricep. So coming into a little bit of a half frog on the left. Turn your head, look to the left. Just releasing through the low back. And then bringing that left leg back down toward the wall. Taking the right leg out to the side. Turn your head, look to the right. Bending that knee out to the side. Pausing there, releasing through the low back. And then drawing your head back to center, bring that leg back to the wall. From here, you're just gonna kind of move yourself away from the wall, maybe press back onto your hands, walk those knees away from the wall. Find a little child's pose here. Just nice and easy, very slow child's pose. Pausing there, maybe stay on your elbows, maybe extend out depending on how it feels to you. Let the spine round, let it bow forward. And then slowly pressing yourself back up. Making your way onto your back. Away from the wall. Make sure you have space for your legs. Coming down into Shavasana. Any props that you need, maybe covering yourself with a blanket, maybe propping a bolster under your knees or your thighs, maybe under your head, maybe covering your eyes. Start to take up a little bit of space. Allow yourself to maybe even stretch and lengthen out. Maybe spread from fingertip to toe tip. Maybe even do a little side bend to the right and to the left. Just really lengthening yourself out. And then start to settle into stillness, into Shavasana, our final resting position. If at any time you feel complete here and you feel like you have rested enough, you are more than welcome to come out of this pose. I'll bring us out of this pose with 3 bells. If at that time you feel like you need to stay and restore, feel free to stay here longer. But wherever you are in that breathing cycle, exhale fully. Take a full inhale, let the belly rise, ribs and chest expand. And then sigh the breath out. Letting yourself drop into your mat, drop into stillness. Allowing yourself to focus only on the sensation of your breath, leaving everything else behind for a few minutes of silence. Take rest. Feeling free to stay here if you need a little bit more time to restore. Otherwise, start to deepen your breath. Start to wiggle your fingers and toes. Maybe give yourself one last long stretch, reaching your arms back, sliding your legs out. And drawing those knees into your chest, giving them a hug, maybe a little happy baby, maybe windshield wiper legs. And then when you're ready, use your arm as a pillow, roll over to your favorite side, pause there for a couple moments, check in with the body, scanning over, check in with the mind, acknowledging the shifts from the practice. And then as you're ready, mindfully press yourself up, come up to seated. Once you've arrived in that seated position, close your eyes if they've opened. Bring your hands to your heart center. Allow yourself to come into the room, onto your mat, into your body. Connecting with all the sensations that you've noticed in your body today. And all the strength, the energy, and the breath of this practice to help you maintain this calm, this awareness of your body as you transition off your mat into your evening ahead. Welcome to the weekend. We'll close this practice with one final Om together. If you'd rather sigh out the breath, you're more than welcome to do that. Exhale fully. Take a full inhale here. Bow your head slightly. Taking a moment, think of one thing in your life that you truly are grateful for. And holding on to that image in your mind's eye as you raise your head with a smile. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking time for yourself. Drink lots of water, eat your veggies, wear sunblock. Namaste.